I didn't raise my voice when the HOA President, Marlene, stormed into the driveway, flailing her arms like she was hailing down a jet. She was yelling something about property violations and unauthorized towing while half the cul-de-sac peeked through their blinds. I didn't even bother turning to face her. Instead, I just pointed to the clipboard in the tow truck driver's hands. A legally binding, notarized lien release from the county clerk's office signed that morning, with her car's VIN number printed in block letters. The driver didn't hesitate. The chains tightened, the truck eased forward, and her cherry-red Lexus, the same one that had taken the brunt of its front bumper to my brand-new Audi less than an hour ago, began to roll off my property and out of her control. I didn't need to say a word. The neighborhood knew enough of the backstory to fill in the blanks, and the ones who didn't were already piecing it together by the way her face drained from rage to a kind of slow dawning fear. She wasn't used to losing, but today she'd lose twice, first her car, and then the illusion that she had any power over me. Thing is, I hadn't set out to become some kind of neighborhood problem solver. When I moved here, trouble was the last thing I wanted. The neighborhood, Willow Creek Estates, had looked like the kind of place you could settle into for the long haul. Quiet streets shaded by old oaks, the occasional jogger waving from the sidewalk, kids pedaling their bikes in lazy loops around the cul-de-sac. My house sat at the far edge of the subdivision, backed by a slope of wild grass and a narrow creek that separated the HOA's domain from the county greenbelt. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine, and after years of apartment living, I was ready to treat myself to something permanent. I'd saved for years for that house. The mortgage wasn't small, but it was manageable, and the backyard, with its stretch of open sky, felt like something you couldn't put a price on. My plan was simple. Work my IT job from home, fix up the garage into a little workshop, and finally get the kind of car I'd been dreaming about since I was a teenager. A week after closing, I put in the order for a factory-fresh 2023 Audi S5 Coupe, glacier white, black optics package, every option I could justify without feeling irresponsible. It was going to be my weekend car, my reward for years of patience. At first, Willow Creek lived up to its brochure. The neighbors seemed friendly enough. I got nods when I took out the trash, waves when I checked the mail. The HOA newsletter was full of bake sale reminders and landscaping tips. There were rules, sure, but nothing that seemed unreasonable at the time. No unkempt lawns, no loud parties after 10, no parking on the street overnight. Fair enough. I had no interest in politics or power games. My entire goal was to blend in, keep my property neat, and be left alone. I wasn't the guy who complained about barking dogs or someone's trash bin being left out too long. In fact, the whole appeal of Willow Creek was that it looked like the kind of place where people minded their own business. That illusion didn't last long. The first sign of trouble didn't even involve my car, at least not directly. It was a letter, folded neatly and taped to my front door one Tuesday morning. The HOA logo at the top looked like it had been lifted straight from a clip art. Library, an eagle perched on a house silhouette. But the tone inside was anything but friendly. Notice of violation. It read in bold letters, followed by a list of infractions that sounded like they'd been written by someone who'd been staring through binoculars into my backyard for sport. According to the letter, I had installed unauthorized exterior fixtures without HOA approval. I stared at it for a good minute before realizing they were talking about the motion sensor floodlight I'd screwed into the back corner of the garage. The same $49 light I'd bought at Home Depot to keep raccoons from knocking over my trash cans. It seemed absurd, so I figured it was just a misunderstanding. I called the number at the bottom, which led me straight to the HOA office, or as I'd later learn, straight to Marlene. She introduced herself as the President, with the kind of clipped, self-important tone that made it clear she thought that was equivalent to holding a cabinet position in the federal government. When I explained about the light, she cut me off mid-sentence. All exterior modifications must be submitted in writing, reviewed, and approved prior to installation, she said as if she were reading directly from some HOA scripture. You didn't follow procedure. It's a light, I said, half laughing. It's not a construction project. Her voice went cold. You'll need to remove it within 7 days, or the HOA will take corrective action and assess a fine. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. By Friday, another letter arrived, this one noting that my refusal to comply could result in fines up to $250 per day. I hadn't refused anything. I just hadn't taken the light down yet, because I still thought this was the kind of nonsense you could clear up with a rational conversation. But it didn't take long to realize Marlene didn't operate on rational. She operated on control. Neighbors started dropping little hints. Don't get on Marlene's bad side, one guy told me while walking his dog. She'll make your life hell. Someone else referred to her as the sheriff, which I thought was funny until I realized they weren't joking. Still, I wasn't looking to start a war over a light fixture. I took it down, just to keep the peace. I figured that would be the end of it. But Marlene wasn't the type to accept a win quietly. To her, compliance wasn't enough. She had to make sure you understood your place. And the next violation. Notice wasn't far behind. This time it was about the Audi. The car had just been delivered, brand new, not a scratch on it. I'd been like a kid on Christmas morning, peeling the protective wrap off the hood and taking it for a slow lap around the neighborhood. A few hours later, another letter showed up, accusing me of repeatedly parking a non-compliant vehicle in the driveway. Apparently, according to Willow Creek's bylaws, any vehicle that wasn't an everyday use automobile, whatever that meant, had to be stored in the garage at all times. Never mind that the Audi was registered, insured, and perfectly street legal. In Marlene's mind, it was a show car and therefore a violation. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about her. And she'd just picked me as her next target. I tried to handle it like a reasonable adult. I really did. The morning after I got the non-compliant vehicle notice, I sat down at my desk with a mug of coffee and pulled up the HOA's governing documents, the CCNRs, the bylaws, the enforcement policy. I combed through every page looking for the exact clause she claimed I'd violated. The closest I could find was a vague paragraph about vehicles intended primarily for display or advertisement. My Audi didn't fit that definition by any stretch of the imagination. It was a daily driver if I wanted it to be. So I drafted a polite email to Marlene, attaching a copy of my registration, insurance, and a short explanation of how the car complied with every requirement. I even included a note offering to keep it covered in the driveway if that would make her feel better. Her reply was 3 sentences long. Your vehicle does not meet community standards as defined by the HOA board. Continued non-compliance will result in daily fines. Consider this your final notice. No signature, no regards. Just the bureaucratic equivalent of a door slammed in my face. I called her, thinking maybe email just made her sound harsher than she meant. She answered on the second ring. This isn't up for debate, she said before I could even get my full name out. If you want to avoid fines, put the car in the garage. My garage is a workshop, I said, keeping my voice calm. It's where I keep my tools. The car fits fine in the driveway, and there's no restriction in the bylaws that says it can't be there. She gave a sharp little laugh. We'll see what the board thinks. And then she hung up. I could have left it there. Just moved the car into the garage and avoided the headache. But it wasn't the request that bothered me. It was the way she treated me. Like she wasn't even obligated to pretend I had a say. Over the next month, the letters kept coming. One accused me of having excessive tire shine on the car, claiming it caused glare for passing drivers. Another alleged that my license plate frame did not conform to community standards, whatever that meant. The fines started adding up on paper even though I refused to pay them. It wasn't just the letters. Little things started happening. That didn't feel coincidental. I'd find my trash bin tipped over in the morning, even when there hadn't been wind. My mailbox flag would be bent down when I knew I'd left it up for the mail carrier. A neighbor hinted that Marlene had been making comments at board meetings about troublemakers who thought they were above the rules. By the time summer rolled around, I was done trying to reason with her. My calls and emails went unanswered. She refused to meet in person unless it was at a board meeting, which was basically a kangaroo court where she controlled the gavel. I stopped sending polite explanations. I stopped asking for compromises. That's when my mindset shifted. I wasn't angry in the shouting, fist-shaking way she probably expected. I was quiet, focused, patient. That's when I stopped trying to win her over and started figuring out how to take away her ability to play this game at all. Once I made the decision to stop engaging on her terms, everything changed. I wasn't reacting to her anymore. I was building my own playbook. The first thing I did was start keeping a binder, not a folder on my computer, an actual 3-inch thick binder with dividers, plastic sleeves, and a cover sheet that read Willow Creek, Property and HOA Records. Every letter she'd ever sent me went in chronological order. Every email was printed and time-stamped. I kept copies of my car registration, proof of insurance, photographs of where it was parked, even weather reports for the days she claimed something about glare or unsafe conditions. Then I went to the county recorder's office. If you've never been, it's basically the attic of your local government. Dusty maps, microfilm machines, stacks of legal descriptions that look like they haven't been touched in decades. I pulled my property's deed and the original subdivision plat from when Willow Creek was first carved out of farmland. That's when I noticed something interesting. My driveway didn't technically sit on HOA-owned land. The easement that gave access to my garage extended across a narrow strip of county right-of-way, a sliver of asphalt that the HOA had no legal authority over. It didn't sound like much at first, but it meant that anything parked in that section of pavement wasn't under their jurisdiction. It was a loophole, a small one, but one I could use. The more I dug, the more I found. According to county ordinance, vehicles parked on public right-of-way property could only be removed, or cited by law enforcement, or through a lien process handled by the county clerk, which meant that if someone damaged my property, say, my brand new Audi, while parked partially on that easement, I could file a property damage claim and a lien and have their vehicle removed without ever going through the HOA. Of course, that was just theory until she gave me the opportunity to use it. But I wasn't rushing. I kept going with my research. I learned exactly how the county's vehicle lien process worked. I got to know the staff at the clerk's office by name. I had blank forms ready in my binder, along with the VN lookup website bookmarked on my phone. I didn't have to imagine the scenario anymore. I had the entire chain of events mapped out like a flowchart. Meanwhile, Marlene kept pushing. She tacked a new violation notice to my door every couple of weeks, just enough to remind me she hadn't moved on. Neighbors started avoiding eye contact with me in the street, not because I'd done anything to them, but because they knew proximity to her enemies came with consequences. I didn't blame them. I wasn't looking for allies. At home, I stayed focused. Nights were spent cross-referencing county codes, zoning maps, and HOA bylaws. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady. My girlfriend at the time, Anna, would sometimes walk past my desk and shake her head. "You're really going to war with her, aren't you?" she'd say. I'd smile and tell her, "Not war, just making sure the next move is mine." By the time the summer heat hit its peak, my plan wasn't just ready, it was airtight. All I needed was the spark. The one moment where she'd push too far, too fast, and give me everything I needed to pull the trigger. I didn't have to wait long. It was a Saturday morning in late July, already pushing 90 degrees by 10 a.m. I'd just finished washing the Audi, letting the sun glint off that flawless glacier-white paint when I heard the sound. Not the idle hum of a car rolling by. This was sharper, uglier. A deep plastic-on-metal crunch followed by the hiss of brakes. I turned just in time to see Marlene's cherry-red Lexus angled halfway across my driveway, her front bumper pressed square into my car's rear quarter panel. She was sitting behind. The wheel, sunglasses on, hands gripping the steering wheel like she was pretending nothing happened. No one else was around, but I knew at least 3 blinds in the cul-de-sac had just snapped shut. I walked over, phone in hand. "You just hit my car," I said flatly. She didn't even flinch. "Your car shouldn't have been there," she replied, her tone dripping with smugness. "It's a violation. I was just pulling in to check the mailbox." "By driving into my bumper?" I asked. She shrugged. "Accidents happen. If you'd kept it in the garage like I told you, this wouldn't have been an issue. And then, I swear, she actually tried to put the car in reverse, like she was going to leave before I could do anything about it. But I was already filming. Full 4K video, capturing her license plate, the VN through the windshield, and the exact spot where her front tires sat, halfway on that strip of county right-of-way I'd spent months researching. "Don't worry," I said, keeping my voice even. "I've got this handled." She smirked like she thought I was bluffing. That smirk didn't last. Within 15 minutes, I was at the county clerk's office, the same desk I'd stood at 3 times before while asking hypothetical questions about a friend's property damage. I handed over the video, the printed easement map, the damage estimate I'd gotten from the dealership the month before, just in case, and a pre-filled vehicle lien form with her Lexus's VIN. The clerk, a woman named Teresa who now recognized me on sight, stamped it without hesitation. "She's partially on county right-of-way? Then you can file for immediate removal. Tow yard will hold it until she pays the lien." By the time I got back, the tow truck was already in my driveway, chains hooked, winch humming. Marlene came running out of her house in flip-flops, screaming. Something about trespassing and theft. I didn't look at her. I just handed the driver a copy of the lien order and told him to proceed. Her voice went from furious to panicked in seconds. "You can't do this! I'm the HOA President!" she yelled. "That's nice," I said quietly, eyes still on the tow truck as it rolled her car toward the street. "But this isn't HOA property." The driver pulled away, her Lexus bouncing slightly on the tow bed. The whole thing had taken less than an hour from the moment of impact, and for the first time in months, I felt completely in control. Marlene's Lexus sat in the county impound lot for 9 days. I know because she left me 3 voicemails during that time, each one a little less confident than the last. The first was pure fury, accusing me of abuse of process and threatening to have my house taken. The second was more measured, asking if we could talk this out and avoid legal costs. The third was quiet, almost flat. "Just tell me how much I owe." The lien amount wasn't small. It covered the dealership repair estimate, for my Audi's quarter panel, the filing fee, and the tow and storage costs. She had to pay it in full before the tow yard would release her car. From what I heard through the grapevine, she wasn't happy about writing that check. The real damage, though, wasn't financial. It was reputational. Word traveled fast in Willow Creek, and by the next HOA meeting, half the neighborhood knew she'd been towed off my driveway, legally with paperwork to prove it. People who had tiptoed around her before suddenly realized she wasn't untouchable. Within 2 months, 2 other homeowners started challenging her violation notices. One brought up the same jurisdiction loophole I'd used. Another threatened to take the board to small claims court over improper fines. By the end of the year, Marlene announced she would not be seeking re-election as president due to personal commitments. No one believed the excuse. The new HOA board was quieter, more procedural. They stuck to actual maintenance issues instead of petty power trips. I still got the occasional letter about trimming my hedges or making sure my trash bins weren't visible from the street, but it was all by the book. No invented rules, no targeted harassment. As for me, I kept the Audi in the driveway. No cover, no attempt to hide it. It gleamed in the sun every weekend, and if Marlene drove past in her new, much more modest sedan, she never looked in my direction. Neighbors started talking to me again. Some even apologized for staying out of it before, saying they hadn't wanted to get on her radar. I told them I understood. Truth is, I didn't need allies for this one. It wasn't about winning a popularity contest. It was about making sure that in Willow Creek, the balance of power didn't rest entirely with someone who thought the rules only existed for other people. Now, when I pull out of my driveway, it's quiet. Sometimes they wave, sometimes they look away. Either way, it's the kind of peace I moved here for in the first place. The kind you don't have to ask anyone's permission to keep.